Ask and ye shall receive.
I didn't want to paint just a tree. I wanted this to feel like a full composition, a complete painting. So I made a beautiful sky and a field for the tree to be standing in or existing in. So I started off with a blue sky, but I did want there to be a sunset in the background. So I started off blue and then I blended that down a little bit and then started with a mixture of yellow and orange to give some warmth to the sky and some warmth to the piece. And then I started to make the clouds, and the first one I made was like this big puffy yellow one, but the blue on my canvas was still wet, and so it was blending into the piece a lot, which isn't a problem. It just wasn't what I wanted to do at the moment, and so I started to make some clouds behind that that were more of like a pure white. And as you can see, when I'm trying to get these soft clouds, I am not putting a lot of pressure on my brush. The brush is barely touching the edge of the canvas. There's barely any contact. It is a very smooth and delicate process with these type of clouds, as if you were dusting off dinosaur bones and you didn't want anything to break. It was a very smooth and gentle process, and then I started adding in more and more white, building it up. And then I switched from this brush into a fan brush because I wanted to get some more kind of like wispy looking clouds and to add something a little bit whimsical in the background with those type of clouds. And then to continue on with that whimsical nature, I added in some of the orange and yellow clouds that the sun is like really shining on and really causing all these wonderful colors to come through that happens at sunset, whether the sunset is more like pink or more orange or more yellow. It was just this part felt more whimsical and warm and fun. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on the sky because I was going to put a giant tree that was going to cover up a lot of the sky. And so after that, I started adding in some other details, a spot where the sun is like really, really shining. And then I added in a small mountain ridge that you can kind of tell it's there, but it's just, it's in the background. And then I started in with our grass colors. I made part of it where the sun is probably touching more. I made that a brighter green, and then I as the canvas goes down, I added in darker and darker greens, and then I started to add a grass like texture on top of those greens once they were dried. And for the texture of the grass, I'm using a fan brush, and I'm loading that up with paint with the yellow ochre and green mixtures, and I am just dotting across with the fan brush to create that grass texture. And I'm not trying to go in one place too much, and but I'm just really trying to spread it out and spread out the light and the bristles to get that really get that grassy feel, because grass, not every blade is going to be the same shade. There's going to be some variation depending on the lighting, depending on what is growing in the field, depending on what spots got more water, what spots got more light, what spots were in the shade, what spots have rocks or plants or other things around it. So you want some variety, and this is a good way to get variety in your piece. If you break a tree down into basic shapes, it will make so much more sense than just to look at it in the full picture, the full thing. You're like, well, how do I do this? So I'm going to break it down into smaller pieces. For the base of your tree, make a trapezoid. Extend the corners of that trapezoid out a little bit, make it a little bumpy, and so then you'll have your roots of the tree that are going underground. Then after that, for the part of the trunk that is going into the branches, basically just give it some arms or some field goals, if that'll make more sense. But just give it something like some arms that are just like going, just pointing up. And for each arm that you have, give that one arm 2 arms or 3. Basically, you're making V and W shapes, stretching out toward the light, toward the sun. They can't photosynthesize if they don't have sunlight. And so the tree branches on the tree, they're trying to reach out as far as possible to gather as much sunlight. So you can make your tree nice and big, give it lots of branches, lots of arms, lots of V shapes going and reaching out toward the sun. Okay, once you have all your branches, all your arms stretching out towards the sun, photosynthesizing, now you are going to add a highlight to the edge of parts of your tree. So wherever the sun is in your piece, whether it's coming from the left or from the right, from straight up above, from the dead center, wherever your sunlight or moonlight, if you're doing a night piece, wherever your light source is, that's where the direction where the highlight is going to be brightest. My sun is on the right side. And so everything that is on the right side is going to get more sunlight. So I got a lighter shade of brown, and then I started to go on the trunk and make some brighter spots. And you don't want to overdo it because, again, this is a highlight. And you want the darkness that's already there on the tree to accent the brighter parts. You don't want to overdo it with a light because then it won't seem as bright. And good news, you don't have to do this for every branch. You don't have to do this for every part of the tree because a lot of this is going to end up still in shadow because there's going to be tons of leaves covering the branches. And if you don't like the way some of your branches look, put more leaves over those branches to hide your mistakes. So you might be wondering, how do I do the leaves? It is very, very simple. What you're going to do first is make your darkest shade for the leaves. I went in and I made my leaves green and black. Like there was quite a bit of black mixed in with the green. And then I looked at my reference. If you are a beginner, always check back to your reference picture and study your reference and study the way that things are laid out and the way that the light hits and the way that just the way that the whole piece comes together. So always make sure that you are looking at your reference. You don't have to copy it, but if you get stuck, look back to it. So look at your reference and see how the leaves are separated. They're not covering all the parts of the branches. There are branches that are exposed. There are branches that you can see. There are branches that do have some highlight that is coming through with the sunshine. And so you're going to dab with the paintbrush and just get kind of like rounded shapes. And if the bristles start to separate a little bit, good. That's great because the leaves, they don't all stay bunched up. They're trying to get sunlight just like the branches are. And so they'll separate and some leaves will fall and some leaves they'll come apart and some leaves will be closer together. It's fine if your brush separates. But you're going to cover those branch groups with your darkest shade of leaves first. And then after you have your darkest shade of leaves, once that is completely dry, you're going to make a lighter green or use the lighter green. And then you're going to dab over, not all of it, but some of the parts of your branches. Again, you have to look at your reference and see where the light is hitting. Once you feel like you've done enough of those leaves that are brighter, now it's time for the brightest part of the leaves. You're going to mix your green with yellow and maybe a little bit of white too. And you're going to, I used a smaller brush because there is less things getting that much light, getting so much light. So I switched to a smaller brush and I dabbed in those areas with that smaller brush and on what parts were getting a little bit more light than the others. Once all that was completely dry, I looked at my reference to see what parts the sun was really, really shining. Some people refer to it as a light leak, where the light was leaking through. I got some white and a little bit of yellow, and very, very gently, again, treat it as if it were dinosaur bones and you don't want to break it. Very gently, I made some streaks of light from where the point of the sun is, straight down, and then a little bit to the left, and then little bit more to the left and up, and like the different parts to give that light leak over some of our leaves. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this helped. I hope this was a good time for you guys, because I did have a lot of fun making this painting and creating this piece and thinking about how I was making it and ways that I could help you guys improve your art and to try new things. And if you guys want to see more tutorials, go ahead and leave a comment. So if you have questions, I am here to help. And thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time.